Welcome back to Beyond Death, where we examine near-death experiences from people that claim to have visited the other side and returned. If this is your first visit to the channel, we operate by one rule only here: respect. You do not have to agree with another person's NDE, and you may even disagree with it. However, please do so respectfully. A simple "I disagree" says just as much as a long-winded rant about what you personally believe and how everyone else is wrong. I assure you that whatever name you choose to call God by, He does not need you taking up for Him on a random YouTube channel, so please treat others' beliefs with the same respect you would want given to yours. Today, I have two near-death experience stories for you, but before we begin, I want to give a shout-out to Zach for his super thanks. Our first NDE is from Anilia G, who recalls dying at a very young age and returning to her body to live the life she was supposed to live. I was 1 year old and fell from the metal climbing structure at the playground. All my life, I have regarded this very unique experience as my very first memory. It is my oldest memory, and yet it is very vivid. I don't remember the events leading to my experience, but I remember the experience very vividly. I was not unconscious, but I would rather describe it as being superconscious. It felt as if I perceived it through a mature consciousness/mind awareness, rather than the toddler brain. I don't remember how I felt, but I remember I felt absolutely no pain, nor did I feel the impact with the ground. It is hard to explain, but it felt as if I levitated upwards, but somehow knew my body was on the ground. Up above me, I saw this beautiful, warm, gentle, yet bright white light. The light had depth to it, as it was brightest in the center, but there was also a spectrum of very beautiful and gentle colors. It was somewhat similar to the sun. But our eyes see the sun as a white, flat circle that is painful to look at. This light did not look flat, nor did it hurt my eyes to look at it. In that moment, it felt as if time had stopped or just didn't exist. I felt that the light was protecting me, and nothing could ever reach me or harm me in its presence. I felt super calm and loved. It wasn't like the love between humans, which involves various different emotions. This love was unconditional and serene. I was levitating towards the light. At the same time, I had knowledge that I was dead. I did not have a word for the concept of death. I had this strong perception that my life had ended and I was returning to where I originated from. I saw my life on Earth as a split second and a tiny fraction of what I was supposed to live. I thought to myself, the equivalent of, was that it? No, this cannot be it. At that moment, I had a clear understanding of who I was on a fundamental level. I am not talking about earthly attributes like gender, race, or ethnicity. I am talking about the spirit me, for lack of a better term. I wasn't a human form, nor did I have an age. I just was. For the sake of explaining this experience, I am writing everything in linear order. However, all of this happened simultaneously. It is hard to explain. I saw a preview of the life I was meant to live. It all made sense, but I don't remember the details. I had a choice to either go towards the light and enter right through it, but I would have not been able to return. As pleasant as this place was, I wanted to continue my earthly life. I was supposed to become someone and was aware that I hadn't even started this yet. As per my wishes, I returned. Then the light started to fade, and I saw two men walk towards the jungle gym. I initially saw them from the perspective of an observer on the side. A moment later, I was looking at them from the perspective of my body, which was on the ground. The one man was my father, and the other one was a family friend. Oddly enough, I could tell that they weren't too worried, but they felt a bit guilty. Although a toddler, I could understand just how young they both were. They seemed as just boys to me, although they were in their late 20s and early 30s. I was conscious when my father picked me up, but after that, all my memories fade. I do not remember anything after that until I was a bit older. The experience felt as if I awoke for a short moment from toddler consciousness, but then fell asleep, for lack of a better term, into toddler consciousness again. Later on, When I was about 3 years old, I started experiencing dreams. The dreams were a unique experience for me. All of a sudden, I remembered the moment I saw the light as a memory of its own category. This became increasingly confusing to me, and as time passed, I developed this belief that I must have been reincarnated. If I had been an older child who died and was reincarnated, that would have explained the chronological issue. I had started to doubt that maybe I got the part about the men confused, and maybe that was my father from another life. I was determined that one day I would figure out who fell, and if a child indeed died after falling at the playground. I am now 34 years old. Only last year, I had decided to ask my mother if she remembers the event. I described it and named the people who I thought were there. She confirmed the event and said that I had fallen and hit my head. On Earth, this would have amounted to seconds. Yet I felt as if I was out for an unmeasurable amount of time. What I witnessed and experienced does not match in duration to the duration of me falling and being picked up. I received the confirmation that it was me who fell and that I wasn't reincarnated. I don't talk about the experience much because I find that people just don't get it, or they get frightened by it. They hold on to their limited, materialistic view and try to explain my experience as an optical illusion. To that extent, I understand them because they can't possibly imagine it. I know it is not an optical illusion. I am, however, very willing to share it with people who are open-minded enough to listen. Our next NDE comes from Joshua B., who remembers drowning and traveling to a great light where a force communicated with him. When I was younger, my parents were both working full-time jobs. My father was stationed at Fort Bliss, and my mother worked various defense or education-related jobs. Thus, I was placed into a summer youth program. I was one of the younger, if not the youngest child, in the program. One summer day, they took us to a public pool. Most of the kids, being older and more experienced with swimming, were at the deeper end of the pool, leaving me alone. I remember wanting to join them and went under the floating barrier to swim towards them. I remember not being able to feel the bottom of the pool with my feet and slipping under the water. I felt fear. I remember reaching towards the light of the sun, shining through the water, and then suddenly being above the water. I could see myself under the water, and I remember feeling no attachment to the body. I floated higher and higher above the scene and could see a great part of the city below me. I still had a human form while floating up. It was like a ghost body. I remember looking up into the sky and then being somewhere else. This place was like being in space, except with no stars. Wherever this somewhere was, I had no human form. I was like a small ball of yellow light. Though in darkness, I knew I could see in all directions at once. Around me appeared other orbs of light. The orbs were other people who had passed away. We all glowed with different shades of light. Some were more pink, some were blue, and I was yellow. I remember that all of our thoughts flowed into and out of each other simultaneously. Despite this, I could still process my own thoughts. I knew that the lady near me was in her 30s, that she had died in a car accident leaving behind children, but she was at peace with the fact that her husband would care for them. I remember a great light appearing before us, like the sun but smoother and cleaner in its light. It did not hurt to look at, and regardless we did not have physical eyes. There was the greatest feeling emanating from it. It was the greatest form of love I have ever felt, greatly beyond that of any parent, lover, or child. It was like every expression of love combined. I remember being drawn towards it, moving faster and faster, but on the other side and moving at the speed we were. There was no real wind, just the softest of breezes. I remember knowing where I was at the time, but we do not have a word for it here in the life side. I remember feeling at home, like I had returned, and I was happy. There was a sound like music, but not music like what we have here on earth. It was like the sound between the ringing of chimes. Some force moved through my soul and stopped me from proceeding forward. There were no words, but this kind of knowing that came into me. It said I needed to turn around. I remember saying that I did not want to turn around, and that I was tired of having to go back so many times and ready to stay here. It said that I had not accomplished what I needed to do. Before I knew it, I was tumbling through darkness and was suddenly back over the city and drifting back towards my body. I was out of the water. I remember several of the other kids out of the water, some crying, and the female lifeguard was working on getting me back. I remember having my ghost body back and the feeling of hands pushing me on my back down into my body. The reconnection was painful. I remember feeling confined in my body. For years after this, I was depressed and wanted to go back to that place. My childhood was not the smoothest as far as my family life was concerned, and I knew if I took my own life, I could go back there. The biggest thing I learned from the experience is that God experiences itself through its creation. That is, we are all expressions of God simultaneously. I have felt in life a deep and instant connection with certain people, especially one of my friends who I also love deeply and who is currently missing. We both have talked about perhaps having met in a past life and joked about how we would meet in future lives. Though I hope my friend is found, I am confident that either way, our paths shall cross again.